Hi there, it's Leslie, and today I want to talk to you about conquering boundaries. Now, obviously, in this very short video, I won't be telling you everything you need to know about learning to have and maintain good boundaries for yourself, but I want to give you some basics that you can begin to practice. First, I want to just talk about what is a boundary and why is it important. Boundaries sort of give us a language that helps us define lines of personal ownership, responsibility, and freedom. Much like property lines around your house or lines around a map that define countries where the United States is and where Mexico is, we have a very soft boundary that this whole political immigration thing is talking about building a tougher boundary because people aren't respecting our boundaries, right? Well, personal boundaries help us in a similar way define how we're separate from one another. Even our personal skin sort of functions as a boundary between the inside of my body versus the inside of someone else's body. And even when a baby is born and they come outside of the mother's body, she has her own separate body and her separate identity. I'm me, you're you. We're not the same. But it goes beyond our physical body. Boundaries are a way of defining who I am, what I need, what I value, how I feel. In other words, as me, I have my own needs, my own feelings, my own thoughts, my own dreams, and you have your own feelings and thoughts and dreams and needs. I can care about you, and I can care about your feelings and your needs and your dreams, but I also am a separate person with different feelings, needs, and dreams. I can't take on your feelings and your needs and your dreams totally as mine, or they're not my responsibility to fix or to change, and you can't take care of or take mine on as yours. I can care about yours, but I don't own them, and I'm not responsible for them. In other words, having boundaries gives us a sense of ownership and language for the stewardship of ourselves. This is my house, my yard, my bedroom, my purse, my country. And the term boundaries gives us a way of identifying what's mine and what's yours, like property lines and fences and doors. I'm responsible for stewarding myself and my things, but I'm not responsible for stewarding everybody else's self and everybody else's things. And the property lines on your house and yard make that really clear for us. I'm responsible for maintaining my yard and my grass, but I'm not responsible for maintaining my neighbor's yard or his house. I can help him in a pinch, or I can feel frustrated that he's not taking care of his stuff, but I can't control him. All I can do is communicate that frustration. I could ask him for a change, and if it doesn't happen, I might have to implement some consequences like calling the township in the hope that the pain of that consequence will wake my neighbor up to a change. Now, over the past month in my blog at leslievernick.com, I have written 3 or 4 articles on this whole topic of boundaries, what's enabling, and I'd encourage you to head over there and read them because there's a lot more information in them. And in those blogs, there's been a lot of comments back and forth, and I think you'll glean more about this very important topic, about what boundaries are, when they're important, and what happens when people violate them. My next point, though, is if you're healthy or you want to get healthy, you must figure out what your personal and maybe professional boundaries are. They define who you are, what you stand for, what you're responsible for, and how you want other people to treat you. And so ask yourself these questions. Am I taking ownership of me? Am I being a good steward of myself? Do I manage my own feelings? Or do I blame everybody else for what I feel? Do I take care of myself? Or am I always feeling a need for someone to rescue me or take care of me? Do I know how I want to be treated? And do I communicate that? Do I know how I want my personal things to be treated by others? And do I communicate that? Do I know how I want my personal ideas and feelings to be treated? And do I communicate that? Now, we all start establishing personal boundaries in early childhood as soon as we learn the word no. No, I don't want to eat that. And if our mom tries to force us to eat something we don't want, we have a boundary. We shut our lips or we spit it out. We want control over what goes in our mouth. No, I don't want you to dress me. I'll dress myself. Even if my shirt is on backwards or inside out, I want to do it myself. Now this child is establishing a boundary. I will get myself dressed now. Stop tickling me. I don't like this. What happens when we say that? Does the adult stop in our life? If so, a child is learning she has a voice. She learns she has a choice. She has some personal power to determine how she would like to be treated in that moment. And the people in her lives hear her and respect her feelings. And when you experience that validation and freedom in childhood, you usually grow up with no guilt or problem setting boundaries with other people as adults because it feels normal and appropriate. We don't feel mean or uncaring when we say no or stop or I don't like that, because we know that communication is sometimes really necessary and important for the preservation of a good relationship. However, if as a child you were shamed when you said stop, oh, you're just being ridiculous, or your boundaries were completely ignored or violated, it's much harder for you to feel comfortable to establish healthy boundaries for yourself. Maybe you feel powerless to stop people from violating you, or if you've tried, sometimes you feel guilty or shame, like you're being selfish or unloving, even if you have boundaries. So here are some possible answers to the questions I asked you about how you want to be treated. Maybe you want to feel loved and respected. Perhaps more specifically, you might state your boundaries this way. I want to open my own personal mail. It's not because I don't trust you, I just like to open my own mail. I want my bathroom door closed when I'm using the toilet or the shower. It's not that I don't trust you, it's just I like my privacy. I want my bedroom door locked at night. I want people to call me when they're going to be late for dinner. I don't want people to smoke in my house. I don't want my office staff to call me at home unless it's an emergency. I don't want to be screamed or cursed at. I want the freedom to say no to things I don't feel comfortable with or I don't want to do without being made to feel wrong or guilty. Remember, boundaries are simply communications about who we are, what we want, how we feel, what we think, what our needs are, and how we want someone else to interact with us, our stuff, and our space. The third point is very, very important. Boundaries are not about controlling another person. We do not set boundaries on another person, such as, you can't smoke around me, or you can't talk to me that way, or you aren't allowed to watch pornography. You can't tickle me. We have absolutely no power to control another person's thoughts, their feelings, or even their actions. And it's not our place to do so with another adult. They have the freedom and responsibility to decide how they want to steward their life. And when we start to try to control them, we're not using boundaries appropriately. And if we do this, we usually encounter a lot of resistance. And it doesn't work anyway. Let me say some of the same things in a slightly different way. Now, the way I'm going to say things is not how you should necessarily communicate to your spouse or another person, but I'm putting things in words so that you're going to begin to understand what boundaries are and what they are not. Here's one example. Please don't smoke around me. It bothers me. I know you like to smoke and it relaxes you, but it hurts me. You're showing empathy. But since I can't control you, I can only control me. My boundary is if you choose to smoke, I'll have to leave the room or the house or the car. Here's another example. Please don't talk to me that way. It upsets me. I know you've had a bad day and you have a right to your feelings, but I don't like the way you communicate your feelings to me. It's hurtful. And since I can't control you, I can only control me. My boundary is, if you choose to talk to me like that, I'm going to have to end the conversation. Here's another example. I don't like you watching pornography. It hurts me and our marriage. I know this is something you struggle with. A lot of men do. But since I can't control you, I can only control me. If you choose to watch pornography, I will watch your boundary. Please don't tickle me. I know you find it fun, but since I can't control you, I can only control me. If you ignore my feelings, I won't be able to play with you or wrestle with you or hang out with you anymore. Now, it's very important that we learn to communicate our boundaries clearly and confidently. Most of the time in healthy relationships, we don't need to set really firm boundaries with those closest to us because they automatically treat us in ways that are loving and respectful. And we probably won't communicate in the detail I just did in order for you to get crystal clear about, I can't control you, I can only control me. However, there are times that you do need to speak up. When you do it, speak clearly and confidently about what you want, what you need, what you expect, or what you won't tolerate. For example, please knock before you walk into my bedroom. That's a boundary. Please call before you come over to the house. That's a boundary. Please don't borrow my things without asking permission. That's a boundary. Do you see? In those sentences, you're asking people or telling people how you want to be treated. I'd like you to be sexually faithful to our marriage vows. I want you to be honest with me. Again, you're asking someone for something in a way to treat you. I want you to call me if you're going to be late. Please don't wake me up in the middle of the night unless it's an emergency. When we don't communicate clearly to other people in our life what's important to us, we don't allow the other person to truly even get to know who we are, or what we feel, or what we need. And either we start to become a helpless victim, or a resentful martyr. Both unhealthy positions to put ourselves in. Now, our key point number 5 is I want you to know some people are just naturally resistant to you setting boundaries. Sometimes they have a misunderstanding of one flesh relationship like marriage, and now we're one person, and so what I want, you should want. What I feel, you should feel. What I need, you should need. And they don't honor or respect your separateness. Other people feel very unloved if you put any restrictions on them at all or limitations. They see it as a wall, a personal attack of distrust, of not loving them. And this is sometimes where manipulators will often challenge your boundaries, sometimes even using scripture to validate that you don't have any rights. You can't set boundaries. It's selfish. It's unbiblical. And I'll talk more about how to counter that specifically in next month's video. But for now, don't let it rattle you. It happens, especially in destructive marriages. So our last point is very important for you to develop an action plan if your boundaries are violated. What are you going to do if the person in your life refuses to respect your boundaries? Now what? Now, obviously, in every relationship, there are exceptions and missteps, but when your boundaries are regularly being disrespected or violated, what are you going to do? You see, consequences are the result of what happens when your spouse refuses to honor your words, to honor your no, stop, please don't do that. And so he needs to experience some discomfort for his disrespect and irresponsibility. Consequences are not meant to punish, but they're meant to wake your spouse up to truth, to reality, and to protect yourself. In other words, you're going to say to him without words now, you can't act this way with no negative effects. Otherwise, why would they stop acting that way? Consequences are not about fixing or controlling your spouse. Now, the book of Galatians in the Bible has some interesting verses about boundaries and consequences. For example, it says that we're to bear one another's burdens, but we're to each carry our own load. We're to have responsibility for ourselves. And it also says that whatever a man sows, or a woman, they reap. And that's a verse about consequences. And so when someone sows discord, abuse, deceit, indifference, disrespect in a relationship, you don't reap the blessings of a good relationship, do you? And if you did, then they'd never learned that if they sow weeds in their garden, to not expect roses. Therefore, what are appropriate consequences for you? How are you going to let the person in your life know that something's going to happen next if they continue to refuse to respect your boundaries? Well, think about it. Pray about it. Don't react in anger. What is the consequence that will help not enable your spouse's behavior to continue as well as protect you from being harmed? Keep it based in reality. It has to do with what's happening. For example, a spouse who may be chronically sloppy may not have the same consequence as one who's chronically deceitful or unfaithful. Make the consequence tough enough that they do inflict some pain in order to wake them up to reality. If you choose to act like this is what's going to happen. Make sure you are able to implement the consequence. Nothing is more ineffective than saying you're going to do something and then not do it. You lose your credibility, and your voice then doesn't matter. Make sure in the way you state it, you're not trying to control your spouse. Don't say you have to or you can't. Remember, I can't control you, I can only control me. And so consequences are reactions to his choices. Let him have his freedom. Let him make his choices to do whatever he's going to do. Not call when he's going to be late, leave his sloppy clothes all over the floor, whatever he's going to do. But then what are your consequences? Hear me. When you are passive here and you do not speak up or have consequences, this is where more of the crazy-making part of the relationship starts to get going. They've disrespected your boundaries. Maybe you've tried to speak up and they start to make you feel selfish or guilty for having boundaries. Or they might even say they didn't hear you. Or they'll say, okay, I'll do it, and then they don't do it. Or they say you're being too rigid or unchristian. Or you start to doubt yourself, like maybe I shouldn't be setting these boundaries. Maybe I should just be loving and giving and submissive and not have any consequences. And you start to back down to keep the peace, or because your loved one punishes you for having your own needs and feelings that impose on their needs and feelings. And you're afraid of more retaliation if you put consequences in place. But what happens then is you become fantasy wife. In his mind, you're the one who's supposed to give. You're the one who's supposed to back down. You're the one who's always supposed to have no feelings of your own. You exist to serve him. Unhealthy and destructive. And as an aside, if you're a mom raising children at home, please set boundaries and do not allow your children to disrespect you. They need to start to see you as a person, not just as a mom, to meet their needs for food, money, homework help, car rides, shopping trips, birthday parties, Christmas gifts. You're not just a mom. You are a person, a woman, who has your own needs, your own feelings, your own dreams, your own desires. And the sooner your children start to see that, while being a good mom, the better your adult relationship with them will be. Lastly, be prepared to follow through with your consequences. The consequences are usually in the form of a loss of privilege. In an adult relationship, it's usually the privilege of your company, or your help, or your time, or your money. And so you could say something like this: if you won't stop speaking to me this way, remember, since I can't control you and I can only control me, I'm going to leave the room, the conversation, the bedroom, the house, the car, and sometimes you have to leave the marriage. If you don't call me and tell me you're going to be late, I won't hold dinner for you anymore, and you're on your own to figure out what you want to eat. If you hit me again, I'm going to call the police or tell the pastor. I'm no longer keeping this a secret. The longer you tolerate what is intolerable or accommodate a person's disregard for you as a person, the more and more it will continue to happen. Finally, I just want you to know you're not just doing these things for yourself. That may, for some of you, seem too self-centered. You're speaking up and standing up for the welfare of your marriage, your future family relationships, and everything healthy and good that will completely disintegrate if disrespect, abuse, and deceit become the dominating characteristics of your home. Then everyone loses. You, your children, and even the abusive person, because he remains blind to his problem and therefore has absolutely no hope of change. But don't misunderstand me. You can do all this right, and your spouse may still stay blind and unwilling to change. But if you stay passive and do nothing, it's only going to get worse. So setting boundaries and implementing appropriate consequences are a step for you in getting healthy. This is important for you in learning to grow and be all that God calls you to become, even if it doesn't make a lick of difference to your husband. You are going to change. Until next time.